The Steelers didn't use the NFL draft to address their run defense. So how can they be better in 2026? That's today on Locked On Steelers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Chris Carter of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We got a lot to talk about in today's episode. Wide receiver, do they make the quarterback or is it the other way around? Aaron Rodgers, is he running out of time with the team's patience as the wait continues to see where he arrives? And our lead topic is the Steelers' run defense ready to hold firm in 2026. We talk about that, whether they can take a step up despite not making any big moves in the draft. But it's Tuesday, which means we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, we're going to get to some words from Patrick Graham that he gave us a few weeks ago before the draft, when we got to talk to him, new Steelers defensive coordinator. But I hypothesized and I mock drafted several times for the Steelers to address especially the interior defensive line at some point in the first 2 days of the draft. I thought there would be a move there, and if it wasn't there, it'd be like the first pick of the fourth round that they had. They don't do so until late in the sixth for a backup D tackle from Notre Dame, and I have to say, of all the things that they did not get on, I think that was the thing that I thought could come back to bite them the most, because I still don't think this team has a true nose tackle on the roster who can fill that role. And maybe it would have been tough to get that guy in this draft class. But do you see that as a big miss, or do you think this group has it within themselves to just improve that much in the run from how they played last year?
Well, I think it's two different questions. I don't think there's a big need for a nose tackle in today's NFL. I don't think it's a position of significant importance. We'll see how Patrick Graham wants to play, but the way the Steelers have played their 3-4 base defense the last few years, it's basically a five-man front. That if it's the three guy, if they have the 3-4, if they have what they call Okie, they don't even play Okie anymore. They don't play 5-05. They're playing 4-I, 0-4-I. There is not this big gap in the middle that has to be taken up by the nose tackle. The other two D tackles are closer to them, and the outside linebackers are on the line of scrimmage and are going to be rushing or involved in the run stop almost 100% of the time. It's a five-man front. And so you don't need some 350-pound space eater. There's no space to be eaten. The space on the defensive line has been condensed by the way the Steelers have changed their defense. Now, maybe Patrick Graham wants to run it differently. If he wants to run some old school 505 Okie, yeah, you need a Casey Hampton type. But if they just are going to stick to what they've run recently, I don't see that being a big problem. And you're in base 25% of the time, maybe. The other part of the issue here is that most of the Steelers' problems against the run last year were not things that I think a defensive tackle are going to fix. When you look at their biggest run defense issues last year, it was 249 yards against the Buffalo Bills, 217 yards against the Baltimore Ravens, 182 yards against the New York Jets, 137 yards against the Baltimore Ravens. What do those teams all have? Mobile quarterbacks that run the football. And the strain of that and the way it affects the rest of the defense is the real issue that I feel like the Steelers have had dating back to the end of the 2024 season when Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry carved them up. To me, it is much more about guys that can, take a block, but also be able to operate in space, and about being the defensive line and the linebackers working together in the run. I think it's schematic stuff. And I think it's about the ability of all seven players to be on the same page working together. And I think you saw, that's where I feel like the Steelers got beat on defense last year. I don't think it was because, look, Keeanu Benton's miscast as a nose tackle. There's no argument there. But it's, to me, that was not Cincinnati. They gave up a big run where he kind of got bullied off the nose. But, that was pretty – and I think it was a hold, if I'm being perfectly honest. To me, that's not, when I go back and look at the problems that they had against the run, not very often I'm going like, well, what really would have fixed this game was a nose tackle. And now that the Ravens are going a different direction, they don't even have Patrick Ricard anymore. Like the Browns don't have 2 tight ends that they look like they're going to play a lot. That was the real reason. Like they might be playing hardly any 3-4 defense this year if those 2 teams go in different directions.
I think that could be interesting to see. I want to take a second to take us back to what Patrick Graham said about his emphasis in the run defense when we talked about it, when we asked him about it way back in like mid-April before the draft. Here is Patrick Graham, Steelers' new defensive coordinator.
So what I'll do is I'll narrow down what we're going to do schematically on early down. I'm not big in having a lot of different schemes for early down. And we'll find ways to be multiple within it, but I try to keep it in 5 buckets from there. Then what I tell them is, then we're going to get really good at this, knock out the run game, prevent shots on early down passing game, and then we'll get to the second and long and third down. That's when we get to the fun stuff. The fun stuff, that's where the imagination goes wild. And the funny thing, I tell them all the time, you guys might forget something we installed on day 1 that had to deal with early down base defense. But if we come up with some funky third down blitz package or whatever, that you might get a sack, they ain't gonna forget that. So, joking with them about that. So that's my approach in terms of, those passing downs. They have a little fun with it in terms of that schematically, but really not gonna try to venture too far off from what this city, what you guys have been known for. Again, I keep talking about earning our place in that tradition. We got to do a good job of, playing hard-nosed physical football. You have to have an intimidating play style. And that, if I were to be honest with you guys, the first 2 weeks, the meetings I've had with the players is more about how we're going to play. And then the vision I have as the coordinator of how we're going to play, how we're going to get this stuff done before we even get into the call, if that makes sense.
So talking about what he was going over there, I think like he very much subscribes to the old Steelers tenet is the first thing you got to do is stop the run, and the second thing you got to do is stop the run. And if you can get that done, then you can get to the pass rush down. Now, like you said, last year they got gashed quite a bit. Now it could also be matchups. We know Mike Tomlin kind of made fun of us when we brought it up, the staunch difference in the yardage when Derrick Harmon was on the field versus not. When he wasn't on the field, they gave up an average of 4.56 yards per carry. That would have ranked them basically 25th in the league. They were in total on the year in yards per carry allowed. They ranked right in the middle of the league at 16th. When Derrick Harmon was off the field, they would have ranked 25th. When he was on the field, they allowed about 3.54 yards per carry. That would have been the number 1 run defense in the NFL. So, Alan, let's say Derrick Harmon's healthy and he takes a step forward along with Keeanu Benton, which very could well happen because those are 2 young guys. They have Sebastian Joseph-Day now in the mix. Let's say Cam Heyward's still Cam Heyward, at least in the run-stopping department. Is this a defense that you think can be better in those situations, especially when they face teams with mobile quarterbacks because they're coming?
I mean, the other part of it is, like you mentioned, Harmon getting hurt. He wasn't the only one. Dean Lowry out for the season. Daniel Ekwale, Isaiah Loudermilk. Like, Esezi Atomo is a guy who in training camp we're like, oh, who's 93 over there? With the 13. And then he's playing like 20, 30 snaps a game by the end of the year. And like, I think he did all right, but they were missing a lot of depth on the defensive line. I think if I got healthy Sebastian Joseph-Day for a full season as a number 4 defensive lineman, not to take anything away from Y.A. Black, who I thought did an admirable job as a 4th-round rookie, who was kind of thrust into a bigger role than a 5th-round rookie. I'm sorry, than they were anticipating. But that wasn't really what they were hoping for his rookie year. They were hoping for him to be able to watch and learn to a much greater extent. So if they can stay healthy, that's a big deal. I think if Harmon looks like a really strong run stopper, we know Sebastian Joseph-Day has those bona fides. And I think we'll see where things go from there. That's why when I was looking at defensive tackle, I was looking at guys that, could maybe be a bigger body than what they have, but also someone who theoretically could help you down the road for a day beyond Cam Heyward. To me, I think that was the opportunity that, they're 3 starters this year. We know who they are, but I mean, how realistically, how many more years of this does Cam have? Like, I don't know, and I don't want to put him in that box, but the team's got to be at least thinking about what the future looks like, and they got 2 dudes, and you probably need 3 or 4. And so I would be looking. I would have been looking for someone not just to be a nose tackle for this year, but someone who could be that going forward. And I think that's the real area where I look at this draft and the defensive line and kind of maybe that to me is not like a thing they needed to do, but something they could have done that they did not.
I agree. Again, like it's not, I think, a crime that they didn't get it done. But if Cam Heyward's age starts to really show this year, they're going to feel it because there were so many plays Cam Heyward saved them on last year. And even if Derrick Harmon takes a step up and Keeanu Benton takes a step up, they're going to want that other presence soon on the Steelers defensive line to step up, because Cam Heyward solved a whole lot of problems for this defense for many years. And that's something that they cannot overlook. But again, I do think, to your point, if Derrick Harmon's healthy, and let's say Cam Heyward's still at least a good to very good player, I think this defense can be better. But I think Patrick Graham, like he said, it's about this. It's about the style. It's about the intensity. It's about the tone of how they address things. They get that right, that can help them a long way into being a better run defense in 2026.
Yeah, I'm not the kind of guy who's like, oh, blame the coach, almost ever, really. But I felt like in the middle of the season last year that they were being let down schematically. That they were like that unit was underperforming its talent, and usually it means something to do with either the actual play calls or the way the defense is being taught or the keys that are being given or something. I just felt like they were being let down, and so I'm not a new coach fixes everything kind of guy. Never have been, probably never will be. But I think there's an opportunity for Patrick Graham to really make an impact in that very specific area.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers, because more interesting stuff out of what may be going on there. Could the Steelers be running out of patience for waiting for him to return? We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. Be right back. But first, to remind you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. Right now, and FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, the extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. You got the Knicks in the East who could be coming out strong. Everyone's still looking at the Spurs and the Thunder. Either way, there's a lot of big names, big teams to be betting on right now. Make sure that you do so at FanDuel.com to sign up today. Go to FanDuel.com, sign up today. FanDuel, play your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Alan Saunders. Alan, before we get to the rest of the thing, we got to talk to our Everydayers Club people. If you want to join the Everydayers Club, you can get ad-free versions of the Locked On Steelers podcast and access to a group chat with other listeners of this show. And to get there, you got to just tap the link below in the description and lockedonsteelers.supercast.com to join today. You can also get access to Locked On merch. But Alan, got to talk about one of my colleagues, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Jerry Dulac, doing what he does, indicating in a story that he did for yesterday that the Steelers might be running out of patience for Aaron Rodgers to show up. Basically, is indicating that the team is looking for a decision from Rodgers by May 18th, which they've now stated some sort of lines in the sand before this date, before the draft, by the draft, start of OTAs, and nothing has happened yet. And now May 18th is listed as a new deadline. And if that doesn't happen, maybe they want to move on. Maybe they're tired of waiting for this to draw to a conclusion. Alan, we're on social media. We see Steelers fans in general are tired of the waiting game. They want this to just be done, moved on with. What say you about this current stance that the Steelers are in, and if it matters that much while Aaron Rodgers misses out on voluntary OTAs and other things?
Well, I mean, I think the first part of it is in terms of what matters on the field, the tangible. There's no difference between Aaron Rodgers signing his contract in January and the day before OTAs. It basically doesn't matter. And even OTAs, honestly, like, you would not expect a player like Aaron Rodgers to be at every one of them. I'm sure DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey and TJ Watt ain't going to be at every one of them either, probably. Just some of them. Enough of them. And to communicate, usually the way that works is, like, guys communicate, and you want to be able to have, like, it doesn't do them any good to have Aaron Rodgers there the first week of OTAs if Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf ain't getting there till the second week, right? Like, you want to have, or Jeremy Bernard, well, rookies are always there, but you want to have that time. So I don't think anything that's happened yet really matters. I do think the team, though, was under the impression, was led to believe in their conversations with Aaron that this wasn't going to happen this way again, that they were going to know earlier this offseason. And while certainly they could know 3 weeks from now, and that would technically be earlier, I don't get the sense that that's in the spirit of what they thought was going to happen, that they were confident that this was going to be resolved by now. And I think they're a little frustrated that it hasn't been. I think if he eventually agrees to sign, nobody really cares. It's the what happens if he comes out on June 4th and says, you know what, never mind, I'm done. Then they're kind of in a lurch. I mean, Skylar Thompson signed with the Ravens today. There was another quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, signed with the Green Bay Packers. Like, not that they, are worried, I don't think, about that. I think they're confident he's eventually going to come, but it's not a good situation to be in, to be here on May 4th and not know who your quarterback is, and to really have pretty much all your eggs in that basket right now.
I think that's the rough spot for the Steelers is if this doesn't work out in the Aaron Rodgers way, you put yourself in a tight spot where you're going to need to win with either Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, or Drew Allar. And that would be, I think that they'd be in a better spot than technically 2019 because that was a much younger Mason Rudolph who wasn't as adjusted to the NFL, and then Duck Hodges for much of the season. But it would put them in that range at least as far as expecting what to expect out of their quarterback. Now, I think they might have a better situation because the offensive line is younger and not as old as it was back then. They have brought more weapons to the offense, but the defense is not nearly as dominant looking right now as it was back then. 2019, 2020, those were top 5 elite defenses we're talking about. The Steelers had this last year was the first year in about 4 seasons that the Steelers didn't finish in the top 10 in scoring defense, and so I think that if it does come to that, the Steelers are going to be in a really tough spot. But Alan, I look at what the way this is playing out, and part of me wonders if Aaron Rodgers does not care about what people say. He's not paying attention. He's going to come in when he comes in. And,
part of me wonders.
Well, no, I'm saying, like, because there's the other part of me that if I'm Aaron Rodgers and I see, oh, so you got a deadline now. Oh, okay. Oh, you got a deadline. And then what if he wants to take this in another direction? He says, all right, I will look around and explore other things. Or if he is just off doing his process somewhere else, minding his business, and he has a date in his head that he's going to show up. He just hasn't told the Steelers.
Well, I don't think there is a deadline, and I don't think the Steelers will give him a deadline for exactly the reason that you're laying out there. I think this is very clearly the Steelers making it known that they would like an answer by OTAs, and they would prefer him to be signed by OTAs. But I don't think there is a deadline, nor do I think a deadline makes any sense. If he wants to sign the Thursday of the first week of OTAs, is that going to be a problem? Like, right. No, not really. Like the farther it goes, it's only an issue if it's a no. And if it's a no, they're just going to be angry and frustrated and look quite dumb. But like, it doesn't, there's nothing they can do really. So I don't think they'll give him a deadline. I hesitate to wonder what the scenario would be that they would even entertain that. But I do think there's already a growing sense that, hey, we thought this was going to happen by now. And I think they'll be real upset if it doesn't happen by OTAs. But there's a difference between being upset and not wanting him, and I don't think they would get there just because of that.
I agree. I think that there's some patience there. We got a question. Mark from Warren, Ohio, wanted to talk about this because there's always the talk about, like, you know, the old veteran quarterbacks who show up and do more and being involved in the off season. So Mark wanted to get this in. Mark, take it away.
Hi, Chris. This is Mark from Warren, Ohio. Hey, regarding Aaron Rodgers, we usually compare him to Tom Brady or to Peyton Manning because they both won Super Bowls when they were older. However, both of those quarterbacks were very active during the off season and training camp. They never let a rookie quarterback have all the reps thinking that they didn't need those reps. And when I think about last year, I think about Aaron Rodgers overthrowing Jonnu Smith a couple of times. A couple of throws that were just off. And I think that we act like he doesn't need those reps, but I believe he does. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think Aaron Rodgers really needs those reps? And we shouldn't be so quick to say we could just pass them off to the rookies and Aaron doesn't need those reps. We need to develop these rookies. Is it really worth having Aaron Rodgers with us if he's not really all in on winning a championship? Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for calling into the call-in line, Mark. Again, the call number is 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute, and we'll try to get your question on the show. Alan, I think the general crux of his question, how much does it come back to bite him? If when Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up, I think there is a time where, like, hey, there is an adjustment period, but I do think that, hey, guys miss no matter how good you are. Tom Brady missed, Peyton Manning missed, at times with their accuracy, and there were times that just you throw it one way, a guy runs the other, or just underruns it or overruns it. Those things are bound to happen, but I do think there is that value of getting the chance to work with the younger guys. What say you to Mark's question?
Well, first of all, Tom Brady did skip OTAs. In fact, he skipped OTAs in 2018 and then won the Super Bowl that year. So he was a regular. There was a 2-year span where he did not go to one OTA, and certainly nobody is there taking attendance. Like, I would say that across the league, if there's a guy 35 years old that's at every OTA, that's more noteworthy than the other way around. Like, that's almost not going to happen, right? It's just not. The second part of this is, they don't do anything anymore. Like, here's like a 2026 regular season practice is probably less involved than an OTA was when Tom Brady was a rookie. Like, they're not doing, like, the whole, what you think of as practice now is what OTAs was then, and what you think of as OTAs now is like what walkthroughs were before a 3-a-day in 1975. Like, they just don't do it. Like, they're limited in scope. They're limited in plays. You got 50% of the team there on any given day. Certainly, like, it is an opportunity to get better. I don't want to minimize the ability to get better on the field. And when you have new receivers like Rodgers does this year with Jeremy Bernard and Michael Pittman, and like Rico Dowdle, there is definitely a benefit of that time together. But I mean, for me, it's like, it's probably more of a benefit for those other guys than it is for Rodgers. I don't think it's going to make Rodgers any better at all.
That's
just going to let those guys get more used to him more quickly. I think in Rodgers' age, like there's only so many more bullets in the gun, man. Like, how many passes you want him throwing this year? I'm thinking like as few as you need to get him through the season, like, personally. And so I don't think that there's any benefit to him really at all. And he knows the offense stone cold. So like that would be the other thing. If it was a new offense to him, you'd want him in there learning it, but it's not. The real benefit is just the togetherness with those receivers, which maybe they would accomplish by doing something they did last year by taking them all out to Malibu and spending a week together. Like you know, there's lots of ways you can accomplish that. I don't really think you're going to notice a difference of the on-field product if Aaron Rodgers is at 1 OTA versus 4 versus 10.
That's where I'm at, and that's why I finished with my response. I was like, I just see a bigger value in. We didn't get to see Will Howard last year. Drew Allar's getting this. This is time for those guys to get a chance. All the people that are saying, "Hey, just give those guys a chance." This is their chance. You don't need to know if Aaron Rodgers got it in OTAs. That's why I think it's fine that he misses certain parts of it. So I'm with you. I think that this is I think that it's fine for him to miss it. And to your point, there's plenty of guys. Troy Polamalu used to skip OTAs, and he's not the quarterback, but he was an elite player that had a lot of planning go into his stuff, and he was still an elite player.
And there have been guys like Minka would be at every OTA and never put his helmet on. He would just be standing in the back of the secondary next to the defensive coordinator, watching, coaching guys up, learning, but he wasn't doing anything. Like, you know, there's not – I mean, Chris, it was 3 months into the offseason before anybody realized Cam Heyward was holding out last year. Why? Because vets don't do anything at that part of the offseason. Like nobody was like, "Where's Cam Heyward been?" Like we just wouldn't expect him to be out there. Like it's sort of a non-issue. And so the one thing I will say is like to revert back to the previous conversation.
Yeah,
this whole like we want to know by OTAs as a team is not about like we need Aaron Rodgers to be at OTAs. It is about like, hey man, we're at this point of the calendar and we thought we would know by now and we don't. I don't think if Aaron Rodgers tells them before the first day of OTA, says, yeah, I'm going to sign, I'm going to show up for the second week of OTAs and minicamp and that's it. They'll be like, all right, cool, great, thanks, sweet, moving on. Like they just want to know. I don't think it's about being there for OTAs as some sort of deal breaker, nor is that legal, by the way, either. You're not even allowed to have that thought.
That's another story. When we come back, I want to get to a caller who called in and had some smoke for Alan Saunders. We'll get to that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I remind you this show is also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, we got some smoke for you. All the way from Hastings, Pennsylvania. Jerry didn't like what you was saying about quarterbacks and receivers. When we brought up Drew Allar, didn't have great receivers. You brought up, well, Patrick Mahomes didn't have no superstar receivers over in Texas Tech. And mind you, Will Howard also was cooking up at quarterback when he didn't have the Ohio State guys. He was doing pretty good at Kansas State too. But Jerry has some smoke for you. I want to give the floor to Jerry so he can let you know what he had a problem with.
Hi, Chris. This is Jerry from Hastings, PA. Hey, I just watched your show with you and Alan Saunders talking about the draft, but my question is, Alan Saunders made a comment that quarterbacks make wide receivers look good. Well, I'm sorry, I totally disagree with that. There's no way you're going to tell me that Ben Roethlisberger made Santonio Holmes look good in the corner of the end zone. There's no way you're going to tell me the catches that George Pickens made while he was here made him look good. I don't think so. That's not quarterback doing that. Those catches on toe tapping on sidelines, that's wide receivers. That's not quarterbacks doing that. If quarterbacks make wide receivers look good, then why can't Aaron Rodgers make Roman Wilson look good? I'm sorry about the way I sounded, but I'll hang up and listen to your comments. Thank you.
Alan, you said something that made Jerry mad. He came in with some heat for you. I'll give you the floor to answer it first.
All right, Jerry, first off, Hastings, PA, this big, but I know where you are. Cool place. Good fishing out of Prince Galitzin State Park. Shout out Cambridge County. All right, 1, 2. Okay. Yeah. You can't, all right. Like, you're not going to make every wide receiver look good. And especially in the NFL, it is hard to make guys who just don't have it look good. And like, maybe the Penn State wide receivers just had nothing. I mean, they're not great, clearly. No, nobody got drafted. It's not going to go down in the history of some. But like, talk about some of those examples you gave. Santonio Holmes had 4 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he averaged 63.9 yards a game. And then 4 years with the New York Jets, and he averaged 49.5 yards per game. Antonio Brown with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 86 yards per game. With the Bucs and the Patriots, it's under 60. George Pickens went from playing with Kenny Pickett and Russ Wilson and Mitch Trubisky, and then goes with Dak. And look at what happened. Like, he was so much better with the Cowboys. Certainly having talent at the wide receiver position helps. It makes the job of a quarterback a lot easier. But to me, if you're a college quarterback and you're really that guy, you are making your receivers. If you go back and you look at almost every great quarterback, they're getting their guys drafted. Even if those draft picks turn out to be nothing, busts, they're getting their guys drafted. And so I don't think at that level, especially, look at Penn State's schedule. Like, there's like 5,000 yards worth of passes against Northwestern and Purdue. And, certainly like the struggles against Oregon and those teams are why Drew Allar's a 3rd round pick, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, you had plenty of games against competition where those receivers should not have been out of place, and they still really were not able to dominate. And I think that is more about the quarterback and the overall offense than, I just don't buy lack of receiving talent in a game where it's Penn State against Northwestern as an excuse. I just don't. Maybe in those big games, maybe that's where some of those bad habits came into. Certainly that's a theory that could be possible. But I just don't see as waving that as a blanket over all of Drew Allar's college career.
I agree entirely. I also think there's also, we have to take, circumstances. This is a case-by-case basis, because you know what? There are wide receivers that have lifted up their quarterbacks by a lot, in their situations. The Vikings do that quite a lot with the way they play. Jackson Smith and Jigba did that.
I think the Eagles did it all the way to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. And, heck, there were times like, whereas Ben Roethlisberger, several players several receivers that played with him looked a lot better because he was their quarterback. Mike Wallace looked unstoppable. I remember there was one year where Mike Wallace was getting compared to Calvin Johnson, Megatron, for how his numbers were just so ballistic. But it was clear Ben Roethlisberger's driving that. Now, that was not the case with Antonio Brown, because there were several times Antonio Brown was the one pulling Ben's fat out the fire. But that's how oftentimes when great players play, sometimes the quarterback, when you have a great wide receiver quarterback combo, sometimes the quarterback's the one just doing the great stuff. Sometimes the receivers do it. And when they do it great together, that's when they become so unstoppable. But I think it's a case-by-case basis. And to your point about Drew Allar, I think what you're pointing out is, hey, it's not that Drew Allar didn't have a bunch of nobodies at Penn State. It's not like he was coming out with Youngstown State wide receivers. He was coming out with still guys that he could have worked with. And so that was your point. And I get what Jerry's saying is that, like, look, great wide receivers can stand on their own and don't have to be that. But I do think it's important to note that that's not a universal thing, because yes, there are guys that stand out on their own and are great in their own right and don't necessarily need to be driven by the quarterback. But if you're going to get big numbers as a wide receiver, you still need quarterbacks to throw it your way. There's very few guys that are up there with their numbers who didn't have some Hall of Famer at some point or some great quarterback or some highly proficient guy throwing them the football. Even Larry Fitzgerald, who you could say he had, maybe the roughest stretches, but at times he had throwing the ball, not a Hall of Famer, but a pretty good guy. And he did have Hall of Famer Kurt Warner throwing the ball, which were his best years when you saw him be as active as he was in the playoffs. So I hear what Jerry's saying, but you are correct, Alan. That is not a universal rule, and I'm with you, especially when it comes to the Drew Allar, Will Howard conversations about we're switching receivers and such.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this is like, I'm not saying that not having success without good wide receivers in college doesn't mean that Drew Allar can't still be good in the NFL.
Right.
I think it is just a statement that if you're that guy, then you would have got it done with whoever at wide receiver. It's clear that he is not, despite having all the physical tools in the world, that guy. And that's why he went in the third round. And that's not a death sentence to his career. It is just an establishment of he's there. That's why he is there. And that's why he is here in this opportunity, because he was a guy who was projected to be a top 5 pick, and he did not have a season that was representative of a top 5 pick even before the injury. And I don't think the talent at wide receiver was the reason for that.
No, I agree with you there. Shout out to Jerry. We appreciate you calling in.
Shout out Hastings.
And Hastings, PA. And shout out to everyone who calls in. We had Hastings, PA, Warren, Ohio. We got more people calling in as well. Get your questions in on the Locked On Steelers podcast by calling 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Thanks again for everyone for calling in. And thank Alan for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, let people know they can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
Saunders_PGH on social media, SteelersNow.com. That's where you find my written work, my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive. On the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. I'm Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You can follow me on all the social media platforms at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily episodes of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back tomorrow, we got Nick Farabee on. We'll see you here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.